So I'm going to start off by saying, I think that a lot of people, a lot of adults that go to this church really don't comprehend how much the church means to the youth here. So to sort of put a light on that, I'm going to share a little bit about my life, how the church has changed it. So before I do that, I want to share a story kind of related to this about my high school life. I used to be on the crew team, and for those of you that don't know, that means the rowing team. Now, obviously, by looking at me, you're thinking, he does not look like a rower. And that's because I'm not. On the rowing team, I am what you call a coxswain, and what that means is that I'm the really lightweight and tiny guy that sits in the front of the boat, and I yell at people. And I steer the boat, I give motivational talk to the rowers while they're rowing, and generally keep control of the team. So because of that, I don't really get much exercise. However, even though I'm just the coxswain, during the winter season of rowing, when we go indoors, I still row on the machines with the team. Now, during the winter season, we have these things called 2K tests, and that basically means just row 2,000 meters as fast as you can. And for the rowers on the team, that's pretty easy. But for me, that is quite hard. Now, when we do those, you have these two different scores. You have your time, and you have your weight-adjusted score. The weight-adjusted score basically means you take your average power that you're putting into each stroke, and you divide it by your weight, which gives you a number that shows how much effort is really being put into your rowing, how much you're pushing yourself. Now, when I took the 2K test, obviously, I was on the bottom in the rankings of the team. But when the weight-adjusted scores came out, I skyrocketed to one of the highest spots. And the reason for this is because rowing is completely a sport about motivation. When you're getting into the piece, you get this overwhelming feeling of, I want to stop, I want to throw down the oar handle. However, when I row the test, I never get that feeling. I never say, I'm going to stop rowing. And that's because of the way that I've learned to live my life, thanks to the church, putting everything on the line and saying, I can do everything with God. So now, I'm going to tell you how I got to that point. So going back to the beginning, I grew up a ridiculously straight-A student, the youngest of three very intelligent children. And however, there was this event that kind of threw my life at a turn. When I was in first grade, my father was sentenced to 5 years in prison. And that was really the turning point for me. Things were okay for a bit, but gradually it started to get worse and worse. Second grade, I got suspended from school for behavioral issues. My grades got worse. I didn't really have too many friends. Quarter annual visits and weekly phone calls with my father started to get to me. Kids in my school were finding out about my situation, and some of them decided to make fun of me. Fifth grade rolls around, and I receive my first and luckily last F on a report card. And fifth grade actually marks the first attempt that I take at ending my life. After that, I started to be more rebellious. I wouldn't listen to my mother, and I would get angry at her for no reason, things like that. Fast forward to middle school, my dad is out of prison, and I can finally be old enough in order to make my own decisions on whether or not I want to continue the visits. My older siblings have already made that choice, both of them choosing to sever all connections. As the last person still in contact with my father, that put a lot of stress on me. I have to decide whether or not he will be completely removed from the family. The day finally comes where I get to speak with the judge and hopefully decide. At the time, my decision was that I wanted to end it all, right? To say the least, it did not go well. The visits were to continue, and I didn't get another say in anything for quite a long time. So here we are with lots of things going on. I've just moved up to middle school, bringing with it lots more work and responsibility than elementary school. I'm forced to continue to communicate with my father and his new wife. My relationship with my mother is not doing well, and I'm viewed as pretty much the most annoying kid at school, which, I'm not gonna lie, I probably was. Up until this point in my life, church was mostly like a background kind of thing, and probably for my mother as well. I think she would agree. We went to church most weeks, but we didn't do much else. During 7th grade, my mom actually convinced me to go to youth group because she said that Laura, at the time, had just started as a new youth leader, and because she was new, I could be new as well, and that it would work out. And she thought that I would be able to make some friends. I reluctantly went, and it was better than I thought it would be. I made a lot of friends, and I think the biggest thing was that I actually felt accepted somewhere. With youth group there, 7th grade actually got a lot better. I went on retreats, I learned about my faith, and things were really starting to look up. It would appear to be the case that I was out of my slump, but everything changed when 8th grade rolled around. Earlier that year, my mother and I had planned a trip to visit France. However, the week before we were planning on going, I got appendicitis. Maybe some of you remember that. I had to get my appendix removed, and I was out of school for a week. And then I came back to school one day, and then I had to leave for France for another week. That was so bad for my school life. I remember being in the car with my mom on the way back from the airport when we got back. I looked out at the colored leaves of fall, and I told her how I was actually excited to go back to school and finish all the work that I had missed. How wrong I was. The work seemed to pile up endlessly. I couldn't handle it, and I shut down. I stopped going to school. I would refuse to leave my room. I just wanted to escape everything. This was the second time in my life that I thought about ending it all. On the brink of destruction, my mother seemed to be my only hope. I don't know how she did it, but she convinced me to join the confirmation class. I think at the time I had actually missed the first few weeks of confirmation, but she told me that there was a retreat that they were going on out in Camp Davis, and that it would be fine. It was actually at that retreat that I met some of my best friends to this day, a lot of which are in this very congregation. Throughout the year with the confirmation class, I built up my faith sort of similar to the year before with youth group. It was actually at the spring confirmation retreat in Jamontville that I think my mom and I really reconnected. I think that my 8th grade year was probably the worst part of my life to this day. If it weren't for the church and my faith, I don't really know where I would be. I definitely wouldn't be standing up here talking to all of you. In my freshman year of high school, a similar situation occurred. It seemed to be this recurring theme throughout my life. Go to school, become depressed, find help from the church. It wasn't as bad that year. After confirmation had happened, I had friends to support me, and I knew how to pray and ask for help from God. It was that year at a small retreat that some of you might know called Philippi. I think it's pretty well known. That I discovered my favorite verse from the Bible, which we just read. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. As you can probably tell from looking at me, and we talked about this earlier, I am not the strongest person around. And I certainly wasn't at Philippi either. However, it was there that I heard that verse, and it really impacted me. So I brought this in with me today. This says, Jonathan, Philippi 2014, I can do all this through him. So this is a shingle from a roof at Philippi in that year that we were doing it. At Philippi, they do these things called prayer partners, where you make these brown bags and you get a name, and every day you write that person a note or two and put it in their brown bag. And at the end of the week, you make them a gift for them to remember the week by. my prayer partner at the time was Owen Hipwell, and he painted this shingle, and so with the verse that I remembered, that I love so much that I could remember it from that year. After that retreat, that recurring theme that had plagued my life before was gone completely. I barely worried about anything. My grades got better. I was happier. I started leading my fellow students, and every time I would think things were getting too hard, I would think about that verse. I can do all things through him. So I know it can be hard to relate to a high schooler. I'm up here telling you this story of how God turned my life around because I know that there are people here that are listening and who are going through something rough, and maybe they don't know how to get through it. I was in the same place. There were things in my life that I thought to myself, how am I ever going to overcome this? But I tell you, no matter what hardships you face, no matter what grief you're going through, no matter what you think or do, there is a God that is worth way more than anything in your life, and he loves you with all of your heart. And if that's not you, if you're thinking, my life is pretty good, I know that God loves me, then there's someone in your life that you can share that love with. Find that person and say to them, God loves you, and you're going to get through this because we can do all things through him. And if you do that for someone, it just might save their life. I know when I heard those words, it saved mine. Thank you.